Was
That's
that a countdown timer, or did we just step into a rave?
awesome.
What was that thing, man?
Wow, I feel so good right now.
It's just so enlivening. Welcome to the marketing trench. We're all here. Ricardo's drinking White Claw like a man, like such a man.
Oh wow, that was amazing.
Oh, that's great.
We're still figuring out this whole intro thing, and I noticed that the comment overlay didn't go away with the video, so that's progress. Anyway, okay, so 6 months ago, first of all, the topic: overcoming roadblocks to hiring and training your VA for success, and that features the three of us. Sucks to be you because there's no one who actually knows anything. But 6 months ago, we had Pavel.
Pavel Stepanov with Virtue Desk
from Virtue Desk on, and he was talking about VAs. And Ricardo has worked with VAs in the past. I had never really worked with VAs. It was a really good conversation, and if you have not listened to it, you should go and listen to it because it was a good conversation, and Pavel had some really good insights. But afterwards, I was thinking, oh my gosh, VA, I should do that. And you know what? I did. And not only did I do it, but Ricardo went and hired a VA from a different company for his own reasons. We'll get into it. And so today's episode is a bit of a what happened when you took your own advice, you three nerds. We're going to dive into what happened, and we're also going to talk about some of the things that we confronted as obstacles and how we overcame them, and sort of what our walkaway conclusions are 6 months after having done this episode and really thought about whether or not VAs make sense. So that's the premise. And I guess, Ricardo, do you want to start with your story, or do you want me to kick off mine?
I'll go ahead. I think the reason this kind of topic came up is because whether we're talking about VAs or whether we're talking about, we've done a few sessions on automations and whatnot. Mm-hmm. I think the question, like even when we do the sessions on automations, the question is always, oh, what was that automation that you did? I want to do it too. And I think we also talked about like tech stacks and how what's the perfect tech stack is the wrong question.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. I think that's always the challenge when we're having any of these conversations, is that you always just want to mirror what the other person is doing, but because it's shiny, it's new, it's cool, it sounds awesome.
Yeah. Well, but you want their success too, right? Because all anyone ever tells you about is how successful they're being.
but the challenge is
we're here to change the narrative.
You will fail like us.
The challenge is like you have to take into consideration your unique use case or your unique sort of business case. And I feel like we almost always skip past that part, or we try to skip past that part.
Yeah.
And that's where you're ultimately destined to fail, I think. One of the roadblocks for a lot of people, I would say probably even myself, maybe even especially myself, I think one of the biggest roadblocks is I don't want somebody else to do it because only I can do it the way I know how. Or you know, sometimes I even say this is simpler or faster if I just do it myself. Mm-hmm. So I hired a personal assistant or a VA. I want to say like it's almost been a year now. I really don't know, but I hired her because I felt like I was getting really irritated with the monotonous or the time consuming stuff that was taking up my days. And I had just had a baby and I wanted some of that personal time back. And I think for any of us in business, yeah, we want to make more money, but we also want what? Not only do we want our business to grow, we also prefer to create more time to spend with family and friends. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's literally, I think, what we all in some way, shape, or form aspire to do. We don't just want business success, but we want the success that comes with having more time to spend with family and friends and do the things we want to do. That's honestly, literally quite one of the reasons I hired my VA is here are these things that I'm doing day in and day out that don't require my unique skill set that I can probably automate or delegate. So I went through my list of things that I can automate first, and then boom, done. Zapier is your friend. And then for the other stuff, I just started to create an SOP. Now I have the advantage of having worked at a lot of software startups. I literally started my career writing technical documentation for I don't know, how to use UTM parameters on a WordPress-based IDX platform. Like,
Is that why you would like to keep using acronyms that nobody understands? So
But-
we're
but
talking
like-
about your standard operating procedures.
right. But that's what I'm saying. Like, I have the advantage of having done that through my career, and I'm pretty, that's not a good word to use. I'm pretty particular about things getting done a certain way. So like, I literally created a standard operating procedure for every single little task. Here's how you do X. Here's how you do A. Here's how you do B. Here's how you do C. Here's why we do it this way. If there's a roadblock, like, here's who you should ask. Here's who you should research, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So I think that's starting point number one. And the reason this is important is because I had an interesting experience. So when I hired, I used an agency to help assign my VA to me. When I got my first assistant, I had SOPs for everything.
Standard operating procedure.
I had a standard operating procedure for every single little activity that I wanted off of my plate. And I gave it to this person and I said, hey, I don't know how you like to work and I don't want to micromanage you. But if you need hands-on help or you prefer to have time to kind of learn it and do it on your own and fumble through it, that's absolutely fine. I'll meet you where you are, in other words. But here are the standard operating procedures, and just let me know how you're tracking along with these things. Don't be embarrassed to ask for help. What happened was, I think like 2 weeks, maybe we were going on 3, went by where I know they hadn't watched the training video. They hadn't done almost half of the tasks. And I was starting to wonder, like, are my tasks too technical? And so maybe this isn't a fit because the VAs here aren't technical and they don't know how to figure out these things. So I reached out to the person that assigned the VA to me, and it turned out to be just a bad match. And, you know, they said, we're so sorry for the inconvenience. We're going to reassign you to a new VA. They'll start for you tomorrow. We'll do those introductions then. But like, so my VA wasn't a fit. It wasn't going to work out. How would I have known? I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't created the standard operating procedures for all of those things. The standard operating procedures were my gauge or my barometer for success for the role that I was hiring this person for. And my VA now, she's awesome. What I communicated to her is like, I'm super forgetful when it comes to certain things, a follow-up and appointment. So I want you to take that stuff off of my plate. We do a weekly check-in on Mondays to troubleshoot the calendar. Hey, it looks like you're double booked on Thursday. Do you want me to move this appointment? And don't forget to follow up with Dustin. You spoke to him last Thursday about getting started with Follow-Up Boss and setting up some automations. Do you need me to coordinate, get a time on the calendar for him then? Like, she does those little things because those are the things I said, this is how you can help me in a very big way. And she has standard operating procedures for the tasks that I have her fulfill now. Now, in my role, my tech stack has changed a lot, like day after day, week after week over the last 30 days. So it's been a little chaotic in that sense, but I try to do a pretty good job of always recording a Loom video and always documenting like the stuff that I'm working on, because I recognize that in doing that, that's how you're setting up that person for success. If you don't do those things, you're going to run into like a world of hurt. Is this a you problem? Is this a them problem? And, you know, a lot of, I think, open question marks that, I don't know. It's just not good.
So I have a question for you. So, you know, you said you're very, very particular and you were reluctant initially to offloading things. Now, did you get comfortable with the fact that they're going to be 95% the way that you would do it yourself, but you freed up all of this time? Or did you just outline your operating procedures so detailed that they're exactly following your instructions, and therefore you're getting the exact same output as you potentially would have, but without your time?
So there's probably a little bit of both in that. And the reason I say that is when I say I'm very particular, like I like things done a certain way, or I expect things to look a certain way. I had to really, and I feel like Dustin is this way. I had to let go about certain parts of the process, and just like I've had to learn to let go.
Yeah.
Just let go and trust that this is going to get done.
Or trust that you can fix it.
Or trust that I can fix it without
Agreed.
the 80%, 90% lift that goes into actually doing it.
Mhm.
That was hard to let go at first, but my VA is so awesome right now that like she'll text me to check in, or she'll text me to ask, is this moving in the right direction? I can assign something to her right now, and I can trust that she's going to get it done, or that it's going to move in the direction that I want it to move. And that's huge, because even if I give her something super technical right now, I know that she has a troubleshooting attitude and a can-do attitude about figuring out the task that, she's been assigned. And that's rare. That you can't train for. So if you have that quality in somebody, then I think that's just overly valuable.
I think another point I wanted to surface out of this is sometimes if you're one of these, let's just call it what it is, if you're a control freak and you think everything has to be exactly this way, I mean, 90% of that is probably 100% okay. There might be details, but there's a little bit of it sometimes that you've got to get over yourself. There may be more than one way to accomplish what you need to get done. It doesn't need to be done specifically the way that you want it done, as long as it gets done.
Yep.
Right. So there could be a little tiny bit of that, because I feel, especially when we're talking, in our space, real estate and mortgage people and things like that, there are a lot of people that are very, let's say they're control freaks, or a lot of entrepreneurs. There are a lot of people that have struggled for a lot of years to grow our businesses from the ground up, and we're used to doing things a certain way. And it's hard to let go sometimes. I mean, we have that problem with hiring internal staff. And I think I think there's even a higher mental hurdle when we talk about external or virtual staff, because then they're not there for you to crack the whip and slap them in the back of the head like Dustin does to his employees
Every day.
Whenever they don't do something right. So like there's this mental part of this, like, I don't have control. I can't watch what they're doing. I can't see what they're doing. And I feel like that's a big part of this. So we kind of talked about this a little bit as we were discussing how we were going to talk about this. And Ricardo, I know you're super, you really delineate all of the steps, and you have all these things that you wanted to do. But Dustin, it sounded like you kind of had a little bit different experience, where you kind of thought, oh, I want a VA to do all of these things for me. And then as you kind of started to figure out, you started writing out your standard operating procedures, that kind of changed a little bit, didn't it?
Actually, it wasn't until we hired the person and delivered.
Oh, you waited until after you hired them.
Yeah. No, because on paper we mapped it out and it looked like it was going to work. It wasn't until we actually started deploying the plan that we realized it wasn't going to work as planned. And we can.
So what happened? Tell us that story.
So after our conversation with Pavel 6 months ago, I actually called him up and I said, "Hey man, I'd love to hire one of your VAs." And so we set out a plan. I signed the contract and everything. Like, we put together our plan on our side. And the plan was, I think it actually came up out of this podcast, because Pavel was talking about how an escrow company in another state had hired VAs to market to for sale by owners. And I thought that's brilliant. I mean, that's a hot market. California is a big state. We can go win this business. We've got a consumer direct angle to our company anyway, like a consumer direct flavor. So it all aligns. So we hired for like 3 months, we hired an assistant. This is built into the agreement, right? And it wasn't much. Like, we were looking at, I think, maybe 12 hours a week, maybe, like at most it was 20, but I want to say it was probably closer to 12 hours. So I wasn't thinking like that, a whole lot of work here. We hired this person and we got the FSBO leads from Title. And, at first it was a bigger list. And then the market changed. And so we went from having enough people for the virtual assistant to call to getting like 3 people that the virtual assistant had to call in their 4-hour time block. Right. So that stopped working very, very quickly. And what we did is we expanded the scope. We said, okay, well, maybe let's have them call FSBOs and expireds, or let's have them call, and we just started expanding the scope. And then we didn't have the systems in place that we thought we had, because, once you get the plan in action, it's like, okay, well, where do I put this person? Crap. Well, we were going to have you put them in the spreadsheet, but that actually doesn't make sense because it adds complexity. And so the plan started unwinding, right? And so maybe if I was as anal as Ricardo, I think part of what makes Ricardo's stuff work is that Ricardo was already doing the thing he needed to have done. And so he had it already buttoned up, right? And it was just like, take this thing that I've already done and you do it instead of me doing it. Whereas I came in and I like, let's launch this exploratory thing and have somebody else do it.
Yeah, I think there's a broader lesson here, and maybe you already identified this, but it's you tested a new strategy that required extra personnel. You went to a VA in order to do it, and you quickly realized that the strategy wasn't going to play out exactly the way that you had expected. So now you're not in a position where you had to hire somebody and pay them a living wage to drive to your office every day and potentially give them benefits and all of this stuff, and they get to meet everybody else in the office.
A lot of overhead.
And so you didn't have to make this commitment, and in a position where, well, it didn't really work out, and now you've got this employee that you're paying for that you're either scrambling to find work for them to do, or you have to fire them, and nobody feels great about that. So the VA was a great way to test the waters on this new strategy and get the human resources to kind of kick the tires on this thing, and it changed so quickly, and now you're not stuck with having to kind of let somebody down, because I mean that's the hardest thing for me in our businesses was always I hate firing people. And that's a real valuable piece of this, just like what Ricardo went through. If he would have went and hired that person from hired it from a local newspaper, or a friend referred their friend over because they needed some extra hours, that would have been a way different situation than calling up the person who owns the VA company and saying, hey, this doesn't seem like a match, and you swap them out, because quite frankly, that person could be a match for somebody else's project and they still have a full-time job.
Right. No, that's a really, really good point, Scott, because I am somebody, there are like two, I would say, personality traits of mine that the VA thing solved. And I only discovered this having used it. The first is the loyalty thing. So I'm a very loyal person. And when you're an employee of my company, this is honestly, this is a fault of mine, I would say. And I don't mean it in the sense of like, my greatest fault is that I work too hard. That's not a stupid interview answer. I really mean it. When you're the CEO of a company, you do have a duty to your employees to fire bad other employees who just are not productive or who are causing drama or other things. And I have failed at that multiple times throughout my 10-year history running this company, where I've just kept people on way too long for the reason you stated, right? Like, I think about the fact that greater than 50% of the people under my employ right now are primary breadwinners, primary income earners for their families. And if I let them go, their families don't pay rent, their families don't get food on the table. I think about that, right? Yeah. But that causes me to hold on. But the VA solves that problem because, like you said, I don't feel like I have that obligation to this person. And, I'm comforted knowing that the VA company itself is continually funneling work through so that this person can just go work on another project. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I hate to fail. And it's so ridiculous because I failed so many times. You'd think I'd be over it by now, but I'm not. Like, as much as I encourage my team and say, hey, let's just roll this thing out, try it. If there are bumps in the road, we'll figure it out, we'll solve it. You know, like failing is okay, failing is okay. As much as I tell my team that, personally, I feel like when I deliver, I have to succeed, and it has to be amazing. Because if I don't succeed and it's not amazing, then oh my god, everyone is going to stop believing in my ability to be a good executive. But really, if I peel back that onion layer, it's just because I have an ego and I don't want to fail, right? Like, so the thing that the VA let me do was fail at this project in a way that frankly didn't feel that bad. Because again, it's like, all right, well, we threw money at it and we gave it our best effort, didn't work, and nobody's really bummed because who's to be bummed? Like everyone knows their role here. You know what I mean? And so the failure actually, like, it weirdly, it de-risked the whole proposition for me in the ways that I needed it de-risked. And I walked away from 3 months. Like Pavel was great, his VA was great. I would hire them again in a minute. It's just the plan that we had didn't work.
So my experience hiring VAs was a little bit different because I'm not nearly as organized as you guys. I'm more of a thinking on the fly, kind of alchemist kind of person. And so what I realized is it was an exercise in fully flushing out your idea and
Yeah.
fully flushing out your processes and your systems. And I can do that, but a lot of times we're like, oh, I just need them to do this. And then you're like, oh, okay, well, what are all of the steps to do that? Maybe they're not used to, and I hired people to work on my website. So, in my particular case, on my website, I update the Fannie Mae loan limits every year. And so that's all 50 states, every single county in every state. So there's like, you have to log in, you have to go there, and you have to do this. So for me, it was really an exercise in humility, and it was an exercise in organization, and just really figuring out. And like you said, Loom videos are amazing.
Yeah.
Especially if it's something that you do and you don't think twice about it, do a Zoom or a Loom video, and you just lay it out there. But I think that's a really good exercise too. Even before you hire a VA, is sitting down and, if we would have thought about this, maybe we could have put together a worksheet or a checklist or something. But there's almost a procedure to determining whether or not you have something that you could dish off to a VA.
Right.
Right. So what is the process? What are the steps? Why is it not the best thing for you to do? All of those types of things.
Go ahead, Ricardo.
No, I was going to say, we kind of talked about that when we had Pavel on, but for me, it was literally outlining what can be automated. So when we had Will on, Will and I talk about processes all the time. And it's like, hey, can we automate that? Can we automate that? Can we automate that? Can we automate that? And we joke that it's because we're lazy, but like, why wouldn't you automate it?
Yeah.
Right? If you can, why wouldn't you? And what you can't automate, that stuff you can delegate. So automate and delegate. That's like the mantra of my day with anything that I'm working on. And that should be the mantra of all of our days.
And just to be clear, automation, and that is the joke. It's like, I automate because I'm lazy, but no, you automate so that you can produce a consistent result every single time. So people that are either supposed to be involved in either end of that automation, that you can ensure that it's going to be a consistent experience over and over again.
Well, actually, there's a second reason in addition to that you automate, and that is you automate to scale. Right. Yep. And this is a problem I run into all the time on the escrow side with training. So my industry is an apprenticeship industry. You get to the top because somebody above you trained you to climb the ladder. That's how it works. There's not a degree. There's not, you don't test into anything. It's apprenticeship. Okay. So you'd think training would be a highly developed set of programs at every major escrow company, but it's not really. Like, it's basically just, hey, did you overhear enough stuff in your 3 years working with an escrow officer to learn something, right? Or did you run into enough buzzsaws that you've learned some lessons? So internally, I have to pressure my team regularly to train their assistants, train. And the number one response I get over and over is, well, I can just do it myself. Okay, pause. Yeah, you can just do it yourself. But it's not about, can you do this one thing in this one moment faster than your assistant who doesn't know how to do it? Because the answer to that 100% of the time is going to be, yeah, you can. It's about the ability and to do this iteratively. Do it now, do it next moment that you have to do it, right? And if you're any good at anything, there is a directly correlative relationship between your ability to do something and the amount of things people want you to do. So if you're highly skilled at something, people want you to do more, right? They're like, oh, look at that person over there. They're really good at this. I'm going to give them this too, and this too, and this too, right? And so now it's like, can you do this one thing one time? Yeah. Can you do this one thing 100 times? Yeah, if it's the only thing you have to do. But if you're really good at doing that 100 thing, then you're going to get another thing. Then you're going to get another thing. And then you're going to get another thing. And at some point, you're going to reach your limit. And if you, at that point, you can either be limited because you want to personally cap yourself out and have total control over everything. You're just like, mine, give it all to me. I'm going to do it all. Or you can say, you know what, this stack, I'm going to take a few minutes. It's going to take a little bit extra time to do it. But when I'm all done with that training process, that extra time that I'm committing to it, that whole stack is going to go to this because it's going to be over there. It's going to be in somebody else's hands. And then you free yourself up to do the next pile of things that was on top of that stack, right? And the more you can take that pile, train a little bit, compress, push out, right? The more you do that, the more you're going to be able to do overall because you got a team of people underneath you. I hope that explanation made sense.
Yeah, and
Scott, you should describe it elegantly.
well, no. What I'm thinking is you're talking about that because you're talking about being the CEO of a company and doing these things. What Ricardo has a ton of experience with is working with real estate and for me in the mortgage space. There's a big gap between solopreneurs and teams, and VAs are an amazing sort of a halfway step. They're training wheels for team building is really what it is. And what it comes down to is when you're a solopreneur, training wheels for team building. Ricardo's writing that down. That's going to be a webinar next week.
Training wheels for team building. That's a good session title.
But it's like, when you're a solopreneur, you work in a small group. There is so much of your daily work that's just busy work. And one of the ways I always like to frame it is, are you doing $10 an hour work when you should be doing $1,000 an hour work? Right. And when you're running a business, you should be thinking about the things that are going to cash $1,000 checks, not the things you could pay somebody $10 an hour to do. And so that's where these training wheels come in is you really got to start thinking about this. And this was, the 80-20 and kind of the Pareto distribution curve of what we were talking about, of where you focus your time and energy on the things that are going to give you the biggest leaps and bounds in scale and growing your business and getting from doing it all yourself to building a team around you so that you can scale and be more productive. So, I mean, VAs are, we kind of talked about this, we kind of touched on this a couple of times, but I think this is so much more of an important topic than what it appears on its surface, just because of the liberating aspect of bringing in, of getting help, right? Yeah. Getting help and quite frankly, making you think of things in a way that you can get it off of your plate and somebody else can do it for you. Because, as entrepreneurs, we're kind of control freaks and we do things and we're used to doing things the way that we always do them. But if you ever want to scale and if you ever want to grow and if you ever want to see your kids grow up, at some point, you've got to be able to get that stuff off of your plate Because listen, the worst and best case scenario of you being great at what you do is you're going to be getting busier and busier, and you're going to grow. And so if you're not thinking along these lines now, even if you think, oh, I don't need a VA, I bet you could figure out something for an hour a week, to have somebody go in 10 minutes a day and just take all of the spam and junk out of your inbox, right? So all you have to look at are the emails that are important, because we all spend at least 5 minutes or 10 minutes a day going through and deleting all of the junk emails out of our email box.
It's hard. It's hard to let go.
It's really hard.
It's really hard to let go. I talked to somebody who's a VA for another CEO in our industry that we know. I won't say the company, but I talked to her and I said, hey, what was the hardest thing? Or what can you tell me as I set myself up with my VA? Like, what can you tell me? She says that giving up email was the hardest thing to let go. But it's also one of the most relieving and impactful, because now you don't have to worry about it. It's just this fog in your brain that you carry. It's this mental load in your brain that you carry with you throughout the day. But that also goes.
It's also one of the biggest time suck in anybody's day, because you hear that email ding and you're like, I have to stop everything that I'm doing, go look at that email, and then try to restart the flywheel project.
Okay, so I want to dive into this one, okay? Because the idea of having someone manage my email, a virtual assistant manage my email, is kind of novel to me. And so I'm thinking about my situation, and I'm thinking about my wife's situation. My wife is a lawyer, and she gets hundreds of emails a day. and some of those emails are just like status updates on cases. Some of those emails are urgent, like, hey, I need you to look up this and tell me what the applicable law is here in this situation. Some of them are, hey, can you draft this and file it right now? Some of it's just internal communication. And so the first question that comes to my mind is, if you were going to use a VA to manage your email, as it sounds like you guys are familiar with, how do you take what's in your brain, specifically your knowledge of what to do with an email, and put that in a VA's brain? Like, how do they know what you need to do with an email?
She does an executive, so she reads all the emails and she does an executive summary at the end of the day. I'm trying to look up my notes for how she labeled it, but she does an executive summary at the end of the day for these are the things that she uses tags. So like I use response required on stuff that I know I need to respond to at the end of the day. And everything else is just like an executive summary that you go over a power hour session at the end of the day and you answer right then and there, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to see if I can find it.
Getting like hyper urgent emails like regularly.
There's no such thing as a hyper urgent email. That's
a text.
Phone call.
That's called a text.
That's a text message or a phone call. It really is. And another part of this is organizing your inbox. So there are things that you just know are always going to be important, and you can set up filters and things like that. And maybe you can hire somebody to set up your Outlook or your Gmail or whatever, and set up your filters and tags and do things like that as well. So it sounds like Ricardo actually has a standard operating procedure for that, for dealing with his emails.
I have labels for a lot of things in my inbox now. Response required, Stephanie's handling, and just a bunch. I auto-categorize receipts and transactions, things like that. I auto-categorize a lot of emails.
What do you use for your email? Is it Gmail?
I just use Gmail.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, so I'm getting this sense that once you figured out how to use your VA, you kind of just started to figure out more and more things that they can do for you.
Oh yeah.
Is that accurate?
Oh yeah.
Can you give us a list of the things your VA does for you? I'm curious now to know.
No.
Well, she walks 30 minutes a day on the treadmill for him.
Wearing his Apple Watch.
wearing his Apple Watch, right?
Okay,
So he can
like-
get his steps in.
Like right now, I've been so busy writing. This is funny. So somebody asked, if you need any help, just holler. I'm more than happy to help, unless you need help writing copy. And I laughed because that's the one thing I need help with right now.
And
I
then
need
you
help
just
writing.
call me.
I need
If
help
only
writing
there was a
copy.
website.
Right. But it's like I have all of this technical stuff over here that I want done and off my plate, because the more I spend in that technical stuff, don't get me wrong, it's fun for me. It's so much fun for me, but I don't need to be playing in there as long as I'm playing in there. I'm better served writing the copy and then somebody else deploying the technical stuff.
I'm only grinning because that's just the story of my life. The things I love to do, I really probably should outsource, because the things that need to get done that like only I can really do are also a bit of a grind.
But
That's not true of all of them, but that's
but-
definitely true of some.
But then I caught myself. I'm like, one week I logged so much time in Canva working on stuff myself because I got in the mode of, well, this isn't going to take that long. I'll just do it myself.
Mhm.
But then I like logged or looked back at my time and I'm like, I spent way too much time in Canva today. So yesterday I assigned her, I need to design some graphics to dump customer testimonials in our email marketing. I could have done it, but I just offloaded it and said, no, can you get this done for me by the end of the day? And, she got it done. It's awesome. But that was one of those things where I had gotten back into this pattern of, I'll just do it myself because I know how to do it. Like, no, dude, you have other things to do that are a little more valuable and a little more pressing. And I know that she can get it done. And yeah, whatever, if it's not 100%, whatever, if it's 90%, 80%, that's still a lot better. And I had that time to work on my copy.
So you just said something really important, because I've used a tool like this in the past and I can't remember the name of it. How did you know how much time you were spending in Canva?
We're launching this online event, and I've been time blocking. I've been time blocking my calendar and adding writing time. And I've been using like a Pomodoro timer to track and keep me on track.
Okay.
Just because I like, my mind is all over the place sometimes. I knew that I wasn't logging all of that writing time. And I knew that I was just...
I wish I could remember what this was, but it's something like that. It's something like the Pomodoro. There are apps, or
there's service like Rescue Time is one.
Yeah, maybe Rescue Time. Like it'll tell you at the end of the day how much time you spend on which websites and an email and all of that kind of stuff.
That definitely sounds like Rescue Time.
Okay, so I've used that before, and it's a little discouraging because you realize how much you screw around all day and how much time you spend in Facebook. Yeah, and or whatever. And hey,
So
Ricardo,
funny.
why do you have 2 hours a day in incognito windows?
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that, but I mean, but that's a I don't know why you guys do that. I do it because there's no cookies. So
funny.
It's but like that seems like that's a really good first step, is like, do I need a VA? Maybe use a tool like a Rescue Time or something like that, and just look at what you're doing all day and look where you're spending your time. And then maybe look at, well, I spent this much time on this website doing this. Well, I don't need specialized knowledge to be able to do that particular task. Maybe that's something that you can offload. So that's an interesting twist on this. If you're watching this and you're not using VAs and you're like, I don't know if I need a VA, that might be an interesting way to approach it, is to really log your time.
Yeah.
No.
Dustin has
no. Dustin's all no.
Dustin has the we just ran out of conversation look on his face. Or we gotta put a hard stop in there.
Well, I mean, so we found ourselves down a bit of a rabbit hole here, and maybe it is a good place to wrap up. But I want to really quickly take us back to Ricardo's story, because one of the things he and I were talking about yesterday on the phone when we were talking about this subject was, I remember Ricardo calling us up when he had his first VA from this place he's using now, right? And he was a bit frustrated, and
I was ending week 2 and going on week 3.
yeah. And your standard operating procedures, like, you're right, you knew what you wanted the person to do and it just wasn't happening, right? And but you felt like, I don't know, man, can you talk about like why you felt like you were stuck?
I felt like I had given you everything.
Not me, I wasn't VA.
I felt like I'd given you everything to succeed in the role. And I wasn't getting prompted, I wasn't getting asked questions, and I wasn't seeing results. But even if it was like, hey, I'm 10% of the way on this, like I was getting nothing.
But like, why did you feel stuck? Like, why didn't you just feel like you could fire that person and get another one?
Because because you feel bad. You feel bad, and it's like, does this person just need more time? Do I need to train you better? Do I need to, like, am I not doing enough to support you? Or what could I be doing better to help you succeed?
Okay, so what helped you to realize that it wasn't you? It was
that I was starting week 3, and everyone in my circle of trust told me, no, like that's like fundamentally not good. That's no bueno.
Yeah.
And it's true though, that standard operating procedure, that's your success metric. Like, can somebody read that legibly and do the thing? Or is it just a mess because your business is a mess or you're a mess?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and those are good questions to ask. Is it you or is it them? And also to kind of realize you're not putting that person out of work by getting another VA. They're just
that's where I felt
projects
guilty.
that are a better match.
That's where I felt guilty.
Right. But at the end of the day, you didn't have to. They could have been a perfect match for somebody else.
100%.
You weren't putting them out on the street. You were just letting them work on something that they could be excited about.
And then I think the other thing that was a big, not turning point, because that sounds like a bad word, or not the right phrase. I had to learn to let go and not micromanage. It's easy to want to micromanage. It's easy to want to, like, I even caught myself. I'm like, hey, I'm probably managing you, aren't I? Like I'm checking in to see if you're okay, but you're clearly okay.
Yeah.
I
was okay. Thank you.
I don't like to be micromanaged. So I thought to myself, I hate being micromanaged. So I thought to myself, okay, well, I don't want to do that to somebody else. But that's also hard. Like, that was also, I would say, a hard thing to let go.
But as soon as you trusted your new VA, you were able to pull back further and further. And as soon as the trust was there, and then you just knew that it was going to get done, then you didn't have to dedicate as much resources, and you didn't feel inclined. You micromanage because you care about the outcome. Right. But when you see the consistent outcome and you trust your VA, then you can kind of free your mind up. And now you've just put yourself in this way better space that you can just focus on things that are more important. Right. So, I mean, I don't think you're going to be able to avoid. I don't think there's anything wrong with feeling inclined to micromanage in a new relationship. But as soon as you realize that this was a good match for you and they shared, some of the same work ethic, and they like you said, the can-do attitude, and trying to figure it out, troubleshooting, as soon as you figured that out. So, I mean, I think that's a safety net, is being micromanaging a little bit, but once you realize that they're doing a good job, you don't have to.
100%.
Yeah, I think so. Just maybe moving toward a wrap up here. For me, the takeaway that I was hoping to get from this conversation was based on my experience, which was failure was easier. it felt easier and less severe thanks to having a VA. And working with a VA was a lot more lightweight than I thought it was going to be. Certainly a lot more lightweight than, to Ricardo's point earlier, having an employee, right? Just on every metric, having an employee is substantially more burdensome than having a VA. And so I want people to hear that. Like, even though it didn't work out for me, I'm really, really glad I did it. And to Scott's point, you can totally treat it like training wheels to team building.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think the important part of this is just because they're not a good fit for you, they're still a VA and they can do work for somebody else. So you don't have to feel guilty about this isn't a good match. They're not unemployed if you say this isn't a good match. They're just on to another project.
Yeah. Ricardo, did you have any additional takeaways from your experience? I mean, you're still using your VA.
Yeah.
And I mean, you've scaled up everything. From what I can tell from an outside observation perspective, you've scaled up her responsibility. So do you have any additional takeaways here?
No, it's just, for me, it was family time to do just family time. So I think we joke about this every now and then, like Ricardo has mastered the art of delegation.
You're one of the best I know at it, for sure. Well, that's a compliment.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I joke that I do it because I'm lazy, but it's not. It gives me peace to know that I'm working on the stuff that I'm better at. And
Productive.
And I feel more productive, and like, I'm literally truly excited about the stuff that I work on now. And it's awesome that I can delegate this thing and know and trust that it's going to get done. Like, that's a mental load off, like, and that's huge. That's absolutely huge.
Yeah, 100%.
Very cool.
Well, look, if you are listening to this and you have any questions about VAs, you can go to marketingtrench.fm. You can find our past episodes there, including the one where we interviewed Pavel from Virtue Desk. Check it out. He has some really good insights, some really good ideas of use cases for VAs. So go check it out. And then if you still have questions, send us an email, contact us. Our contact information is on the website. We would be happy to help you out. You can also leave a comment in this video and we will come back and respond. We're happy to do that. And by the way, if you're watching this on YouTube and you are not a subscriber, we would appreciate subscriptions. Last I checked, we were up to 77. Our goal is to get to 100. So if you have been enjoying this content, please do like this video and subscribe to us on YouTube. Get us to 100. That lets us get the fancy domain name. We'd be very excited about that. The fancy URL, the vanity URL. If you were interested in learning more about the great stuff Ricardo is doing, including getting a different podcast, you're still doing your podcast, right?
Yep.
And your authority newsletter, you can go to ricardobueno.com. He's always interviewing interesting people who are doing great work, especially in the real estate, sales, and marketing space. Really good place to go get tactics, get recipes for success, figure out how to build your tech stacks, all that kind of stuff. ricardobueno.com. You can find him there. If you are interested in anything mortgage related, especially if you're trying to do a discovery mission on mortgage products, findmywayhome.com can be a great place for you to start. And if you are looking to do escrow, as I'm sure you are, because so many people do escrow. If you're refinancing your house or you're going to be selling your house, my company would be happy to help you if you are selling or refinancing a house in California. And if all you want to do is figure out, hey, seriously, how much money am I going to walk away with here if I sell this house? Our free closing cost calculator right on our homepage. Scroll down a couple scrolls, you'll find it. Will help you to get a quick estimate of how much money you can walk away with if you sold your house today. And that's after all the closing costs, after paying people like me, title, lender, and all the rest. So that's that. Guys, it's been good talking with you. Until next time, this has been the Marketing Trench.
Yeah.